Mine eyes have seen the glory of the
By 1957, 3 years after the Supreme Court ruled that segregated schools were unconstitutional, most black children in the South were still forced to attend substandard schools.
All the people of the South are in favor of segregation. And Supreme Court or no Supreme Court, we are going to maintain segregated schools down in Dixie.
And that was the resistance. They are not going to get equal treatment. What do you mean? Go to school with my little darling? And that is why resistance.
Little Rock, Arkansas was supposed to be different. It was a moderate city and a moderate state with an active NAACP. The Little Rock School Board agreed to start integrating its schools in 1957. In the first year, 9 black teenagers would attend Central High School. They were contemporaries of Emmett Till and grew up with the memory of the violence that had confronted Till 2 years earlier. Orville Faubus was the governor of Arkansas. A moderate by Southern standards, the black community had supported him in the past. But in his last election, he had faced tough opposition. He knew if he wanted to be re-elected, he needed the segregationist vote. The night before school opened, Faubus decided to resist integration.
I have therefore, in accordance with the solemn responsibilities and the oath of my office, taken the following action. Units of the National Guard have been and are now being mobilized with the mission to maintain or restore the peace and good order of this community. Advanced units are already on duty on the grounds of Central High School.
The Arkansas National Guard ringed the school with orders to admit only the white students. State troops were now being used to prevent enforcement of federal law. The first day, 8 of the 9 black students went to school together, accompanied by their parents and ministers. They were turned away by the National Guard. The 9th student, Elizabeth Eckford, had missed the call to gather with the others before school. She walked alone and faced a mob.
Well, it has to be the most frightening thing. I mean, because she had a crowd of white people behind her threatening to kill her. She had nobody. I mean, there was not a black face in sight anywhere. Nobody that she could turn to as a friend, except that this woman came out of the crowd and guided her through the mob and onto the bus and got her home safely.
In mid-September, President Eisenhower asked the governor to meet with him. The president thought he had convinced Faubus to admit the black students peacefully. Back in Little Rock, Faubus simply removed the National Guard, leaving only a small force of city police to protect the Little Rock Nine as they entered Central High School.
We entered the side of the building, thousands of people out front. And we were entering the side, and I could just get a glimpse of this group. And on the car, I could hear, on the car radio, I could hear that there was a mob. And I knew what a mob meant. And I knew that the sounds that came from the crowd were very angry. So we entered the side of the building very, very fast.
We've just got a report here on this end that the students are in. They're trying.
The mob was getting past the wooden sawhorses because the policemen would no longer fight their own in order to protect us. And so someone made a suggestion that if they allowed the mob to hang one kid, they could then get the rest out. And a gentleman, whom I believe to be the assistant chief of police, said, "How are you going to choose? You're going to let them draw straws." He said, "I'll get them out." And we were taken to the basement of this place. and we were put into 2 cars, grayish blue colored Fords. And the man instructed them, he said, once you start driving, do not stop.
The rioting was headline news. The nation and the world saw unmistakably the face of resistance. Finally, President Eisenhower realized he had to act. That night, he sent in paratroopers of the 101st Airborne Division.
This challenge must be met, and with such measures as will preserve to the people as a whole their lawfully protected rights. Mob rule can not be allowed to override the decisions of our courts.
We are now an occupied territory. In the name of God, whom we all revere, in the name of liberty we hold so dear, in the name of decency which we all cherish, what is happening in America?
Daisy Bates, state president for the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, worked closely with the students and their families. Each morning, the students gathered at her home to begin their safe journey to school.
And the convoy that went from Mrs. Bates' house to the school, it had a Jeep in front, a Jeep behind. They both had machine gun mounts. And then the whole school was ringed with paratroopers and helicopters hovering around. And we marched up the steps with this circle of soldiers with bayonets drawn. I figured that we had really gone into school that day. And walking up the steps that day was probably one of the biggest feelings I've ever had.
Tell your mama, tell your pa, I'm gonna send you back to Arkansas. Oh, yeah.
It was the beginning of a school year like no other at Little Rock Central High.
Don't do it right.
When we got into school, they then assigned us an individual soldier to walk us from class to class. He waited outside the classroom, and every time the bell rang and classes changed, he would walk us. We'd have our own personal guide walking us to the next class.
The troops were wonderful. If, there was some fear that they were dating the girls in high school. And I don't care what they were doing, they were wonderful. But they couldn't be with us everywhere. They couldn't be with us, for example, in the ladies' bathroom. They couldn't be with in gym. You'd be walking out to the volleyball court and someone would break a bottle and trip you on the bottle. I have scars on my right knee from that.
And I began to change from being somebody who I considered myself a moderate who, if I had my way, would have said, let's don't integrate because it's the state's right to decide, to someone who felt a real sense of compassion for these students and felt like they deserved something that I had. And I also developed a real dislike for the people that were out there that were causing the problems. It was very unsettling to me.
I'm Minnie Jean Brown. I'm thankful for the many people who have stood by us and worked diligently in our struggle for...
At school, the black teenagers were still being harassed by a few determined whites. Shortly before Christmas, Minnie Jean Brown struck back.
For a couple of weeks, there had been a number of white kids following us. A series of hassles, continuous calling us niggers, nigger, 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 one right after the other. And Minnie Jean Brown was in the lunch line with me. And I was in front of Minnie. Minnie was behind me, and there was this white kid, fella, who was much shorter than Minnie. Minnie was about 5'10", and this fella couldn't have been more than 5'5", 5'4". And he reminded me of a small dog yelping at somebody's leg. And Minnie had just picked up a chili
I could just see her little head click. She consciously said to herself, no, Minnie Jean, if you do this, you know you won't be here. But then this was the time of the year when we all didn't want to be there.
And before I could even say, you know, Minnie, why don't you tell them to shut up? Minnie had taken this chili, dumped it on this dude's head. It was just absolute silence in the place. And then the help, all black, broke into applause. And the white kids, the other white kids there, didn't know what to do. I mean, it was the first time that anybody, I'm sure, had seen somebody black retaliate in that sense.
When Minnie Jean was kicked out of school following the chili incident, maybe 15, 20 students brought cards and gave them out that said 1 down, 8 to go. When school was out in May, they still hadn't given up the fight. They came out with a 2-color card that said, "Ike, go home, Liberation Day, May 29th, 1958, which was graduation day. They were still fighting the battle even then.
On May 29th, 1958, Central High School prepared to graduate 601 white students and Ernest Green.
There were a lot of claps for the students. You know, they talked about who had received scholarships, who was an honor student and all that as they called their names off. When they called my name, it was nothing, just the name. And there was this eerie silence. Nobody clapped. But I figured they didn't have to, because after I got that diploma, that was it. I had accomplished what I had come there for.
I'm so glad I'm fighting for my rights. Oh, I'm so glad I'm fighting for my rights.
The next year, Governor Faubus closed down all of Little Rock's high schools to halt integration. He easily won his 3rd term as governor. The resistance continued, but Ernest Green's graduation was an important moment for the civil rights movement. Emmett Till's generation was going to college, and a new chapter in the struggle for equal justice was about to begin.